Okay, the last Iron Age source that I want to look at is this famous text from ancient Greece, right? This is book one of Homer's Odyssey. And there's a lot, again, much as with the Hebrew Bible or these other things we've looked at, there's a lot of richness to this. And we can't possibly hope to do all of this justice, right? But let's try to focus on these questions of law and warfare and, the rules governing kind of social behavior and things like that, right? We also get a lot in book one here about the Greek ideas about the gods. And I think that can be pretty helpful to sort of chew on, to think about, to puzzle over, okay? We're introduced in book one of the Odyssey to Odysseus, although Odysseus himself doesn't show up until a later book. But he's mentioned here that he can't get home, right? Odysseus was a warrior in the Trojan War. Trojan War lasted for 10 years. This is a legendary war. Obviously, we don't know how long it really lasted or what the nature of it was, but legendarily it lasted for 10 years. And it's been 10 more years, and Odysseus has not been able to get home to his home polis of Ithaca, right? Polis is his city-state, so to speak. And this is because he angered Poseidon. He did so by blinding Poseidon's son, the king of the Cyclops, Polyphemus, which we read about in a later book. Okay, but Poseidon he's tormented him. He hasn't killed him outright, but he has tormented him by preventing him from getting home. And now Odysseus is kind of held prisoner by a minor goddess named Calypso, who is in love with him. And Odysseus, is forced to stay with her on her island. But a break has just happened in the story, so to speak, right? And so this whole thing starts in medias res, in the middle of things. Poseidon has gone to visit the Ethiopians worlds away, right? So Poseidon is in another place. Now, this is a very different notion of God than we see with the Hebrews, right? These gods are in some ways limited, right? Poseidon is not omnipresent. He is, and according to the Greek conception, Ethiopia would have been the end of the world, as far away as they could possibly conceive. Poseidon has gone there, and he's not watching what Odysseus is doing. And so this gives Odysseus a chance, or rather it gives Athena a chance, because Athena is Odysseus' greatest supporter. Why is Athena a supporter of Odysseus? Well, that's a question I think that it would be fruitful to think about, right? In short, it's not because of a love relationship, though those sorts of things do exist in plenty of Greek mythology. It's because Athena is an admirer of Odysseus. In some ways, Odysseus is her mortal counterpart. He's a great strategist. He's wise. He's also a great warrior, right? And all of these things are the kinds of things that Athena was associated with. And so she comes to Mount Olympus, and Zeus, her father, and the king of the gods, is just kind of complaining about mortals. He says, how shameless the way these mortals blame the gods. From us alone, they say, come all their miseries, yes, but they themselves, with their own reckless ways, compound their pains beyond their proper share. So this, I think, is a point that was obviously thought about, debated in ancient Greece, right? How much of the miseries that we have, the problems we have, are attributed to the gods, and how much are our own faults? Well, Zeus is kind of this beleaguered manager trying to just keep everything in order, and these mortals keep doing stupid things. So he talks about Agamemnon being murdered by his wife's lover, and all of this after he returned from... Athena catches him at this vulnerable moment, and she's like, yeah, you're right, Dad. All of these mortals are just terrible, but, there is Odysseus. Like, what about him? Isn't he a good guy? Why haven't you allowed him to go home, right? And Zeus is like, oh, well, how can I forget Odysseus? Right? Great Odysseus, and here's the highlighted part, who excels all men in wisdom, excels in offerings too. He gives the immortal gods who rule in the vaulting skies. No, it's Poseidon's fault. I can't interfere in Poseidon's sphere. We would have a war between the gods if I tried to do that, right? So a few observations from this. First of all, why is Odysseus admired by the gods? Well, part of it is that he's an extremely capable person, but it's also because he gives lots of offerings to the gods. He appeases them. This is typical in kind of these ancient polytheistic systems. It's not, because he is an especially upstanding moral character or something like that, it seems, although he does have some good qualities in that respect. But it's that he gives lots of offerings to the gods, and he does the kind of things that the gods admired, like he's good at military strategy, he's a wise person, he thinks through things and all of that, right? And so Zeus is like, okay, maybe we can have a little intervention, let's put our heads together and come up with a plan. And at this point, Athena, kicks things into gear. She's already got a plan. She is the strategist goddess, after all. That makes sense, right? So she goes to Ithaca, and here we get a view of what's happened in Ithaca, right? Odysseus has been gone for 20 years. His wife, Penelope, has been entertaining propositions from a number of suitors. Essentially, all of the prominent young men of the town are trying to court her. Why is that the case? Well, it's because there's a competition to become the leader, and the Greek word for this would be the basileus, of Ithaca. Odysseus was that. The assumption is he's not coming back, and so the person who can essentially marry his wife and take over his position is going to be the next Basileus. But Telemachus, his young son, who has never actually met his father, his mother was pregnant when Odysseus left, so he is roughly 20 years old, right? He has come of age, and his position is uncertain. It's kind of tenuous, right? And so Athena goes to visit Telemachus. She disguises herself as a mortal, as a warrior. She eventually claims to have known Odysseus and fought with him, right? And Telemachus does a good thing here. Now, one of the kind of rules that governed Greek social behavior was hospitality. They were expected to be hospitable, with the thought that if a stranger shows up, it could be a god in disguise. And in this case, it actually is. Telemachus is generous to Athena. The suitors, on the other hand, are quite rude. And this, does not exactly earn them the favor of Athena. It draws her ire, and eventually that's going to, be a really bad thing for them. But Telemachus here kind of confesses the situation in the highlighted part. Dear stranger, would you be shocked by what I say? Look at them over there, not a care in the world, just liars and tunes, easy for them, all right. They feed on another's goods and go scot-free. A man whose white bones lie strewn in the rain somewhere, rotting away on land or rolling down the ocean's salty swells. But that man, if they caught sight of him at home in Ithaca, by God, they'd all pray to be faster on their feet than richer in bars of gold and heavy robes. And so what's happening here? Well, these suitors who were trying to court Penelope, because of the laws, they're taking advantage of the laws of hospitality or the customs of hospitality. They are feasting on all of Odysseus's cattle, his sheep, his goats, right? Drinking milk, eating eggs, consuming all of his estate here. And Telemachus, because he is too young and really hasn't come into his majority, can't do anything about this. And so Athena's solution to this, right, is to be a man, right, to take his place in the society, to essentially demand the privileges to which he is entitled, right? And Telemachus is kind of grieving over his father, and he's like, and I don't know what to do about my mother, right? She won't marry one of these guys. She doesn't want to do that, but she can't bring the courting to an end, and I'm just stuck in the middle of all of this. And Athena says, right, listen closely, take my words to heart. At daybreak, summon the island's lords to full assembly. Give your orders to all and call the gods to witness. Tell the suitors to scatter, each to his own place. As for your mother, if the spirit moves her to marry, let her go back to her father's house, a man of power. Her kin will arrange the wedding, provide the gifts, the array that goes with a daughter dearly loved, right? And so Athena's like, take your place as the head of the household. Tell your mother to go to her father. Now, in the Greek world, as in many of these other places we've looked at, right, women did not have their own legal status, and one of the things that seems to have gone wrong in Ithaca is that Penelope herself, as admirable as she is in so many ways, is running the household, is the public face of the household of Odysseus. And that, in the view of the ancient Greeks, would have been a disruption. For a woman to be the public face meant that something had gone wrong. And so Telemachus needed to put things right, and to call the assembly. Now, what's the assembly? Well, the assembly was there's a common institution in ancient Greece where all of the citizens of a place would come together and debate the issues of the day. Citizens, in this case, this is the early archaic age, would have been the prominent landholders. This would have been a kind of aristocracy, of course, headed by the basileus. But at this point, there is no basileus. Odysseus is gone. And so, this assembly he's going to call it was a common institution in ancient Greece. This is how they figured out how to do things legally and how to solve disputes and all of that. So Telemachus essentially needs to be the man of the house, and to take charge of the whole thing. And so he does this. He calls the assembly, right? And he orders his... there's a point where his mother comes in and is like... She tries to tell the entertainer, the bard, to stop singing this song because it makes her sad. And Telemachus is like, "Oh, mother, we all want to hear this song. Go back to your quarters." And she does, right? He says, "I hold the reins of power in this house." And she's astonished and actually kind of proud of her son in some ways, even though she's a little confused by this whole thing. And then he calls this assembly. So Telemachus is taking charge, and he's entering public life, so to speak, right, with the support of Athena, okay? And the suitors are not happy about this because it compromises their position. It means they have to deal with a potential rival threat. They try to write him off as a non-factor in all of this, but with the support of Athena, he's able to accomplish a great deal. All right, there's a lot more to this, obviously, but hopefully that gives you some issues to think about. Please feel free to bring up anything you like about the Odyssey in discussion. Thank you very much.